Today we're going to compare the Samsung Galaxy S20 versus the Honor 20 Pro. Even though this is a flagship versus budget battle, they both got multiple cameras. The Honor 20 Pro actually has 4 cameras and S20 has 3. So this is a low light test of the front facing camera, walking out at night, and there is a building right next to me, so there should be a bunch of light on my face. But let's move on to the next section. For portrait mode, both are pretty flexible. For the Samsung S20, you have the wide and you can zoom in for a telephoto shot. On the Honor, you got 1x, 2x, and 3x, so 3 choices there versus 2 on the Samsung. A fair warning on my experience, the 3x on the Honor 20 Pro seems to be slow on focus. Since we are wearing masks around this time, the Samsung doesn't really recognize my face with the mask on. I do notice that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. There are times where I can see the effect working on the screen, but once I take the picture, it doesn't work. But once it actually sees my face, it works really fast. For the portrait experience, they both are a little bit different. On the Samsung, it will tell you that when the effect is ready, so you would have to move around sometimes for it to recognize the object. But for the most part, it recognizes things really fast, so you don't have to do too much of that. On the Honor, it's just point and shoot, really similar to the Huawei since they make the phone as well, and Google phones. For the modes, Samsung has something called Live View, which works with people and objects in the same camera mode. On the Honor 20 Pro, they have portrait mode for people only and aperture mode for objects. So it's 2 modes, but they both kind of do the same thing. For the minimal, simple, and easy one to use, Samsung would be the better one. So the Honor 20 Pro does have a 4th camera lens. It's the macro lens, which the Samsung does not have. Now moving on to everyday situations, they both are really similar because they got the ultra wide, regular, and telephoto lens. For the ultra wide, Samsung has one of the widest ultra wide lenses out there, so if you really like that epic wide shot, then Samsung is the one to go with. Both phones can zoom up to 30x, which I think a lot of people won't do anyways, and the images does not tend to look good at all. For the colors, I think the Samsung does a better job at white balancing things because whatever is white actually looks white in the photo. And it's known to have a more saturated look, so it does give a pop to it as well. On the Honor 20 Pro, the pictures seem to look a bit warmer, which looks a bit closer to the eye because the sun does cast a yellowish tone to what we see when we're outside. So for the colors, it's really dependent on what you like, so it's all self-preference. Now going to low light, the colors or white balance seems to switch roles. On the Honor 20 Pro, the white seems to be much more white than the Samsung. So in this case, the S20 seems to be more realistic to the eye because the yellow tungsten street lamps, they actually emulate the same color or closer to the color on their pictures. And since the Honor 20 Pro's white balancing is a bit more aggressive, it tends to look a bit more blue, but it's not to the point where it looks unnormal. In terms of darker areas, I think the Samsung does a bit better, but not by much. And at this point, I'm just gonna say that the Samsung phone's performance in really dark areas are not the best. When you hit the shutter button, it starts to lag a bit, and you know it's trying to process and try to create the best picture possible. And it does, it shows, but at the same time, you're sacrificing the performance of your camera. Now moving on to night mode, which they both have, the Samsung S20 seems to have the brighter picture. So it may look a little bit unnatural depending on your taste, but I would say that the quality and the clarity is a bit better, especially if you're taking in really dark areas. Now going into night mode, on the Samsung phone, you would have to wait a bit until it tells you how long you have to hold the camera. On the Honor 20 Pro, once you go into night mode, you can hit the shutter button right away and it just works. So again, the Samsung performance in nighttime is a bit sluggish. Now moving on to video in 4K 30, the stabilization on the Samsung is really good. I think the ultra wide has one of the best ones I've ever experienced. Honestly, it looks like I'm almost on a gimbal. And of course, it does have the wider ultra wide lens. For the regular lens, the Samsung still wins. As I'm panning around, you can see a lot more handheld look or handheld shake on the Honor 20 Pro. And the Samsung S20 does have the better HDR. Of course, you can tell that it's the brighter image than the Honor. The Samsung S20 can shoot in 4K 60, but the stabilization seems to be lacking. It kind of went down into the same level as the Honor 20 Pro. But for HDR, it seems to be unchanged, so it's still the better one. The Samsung S20 can shoot up to 8K 30, which is crazy for the phone, but as I'm panning around, you can tell it's a bit choppy, but overall, the image still looks pretty good. But honestly, I don't think this is a mode where a lot of people or the average person would even use, so this is just something there just in case you want to use it. Now moving on into low light, for the ultra wide, I would just avoid at all costs. It doesn't look too good on both phones, but the Samsung phone does seem to have the better image. And for the main lens, in my opinion, I think the Samsung wins hands down. It does have less micro jitters, it has the better stabilization. The colors may be a bit too yellow, but overall I think the quality is better on the Samsung S20. Moving on to 4K 60 on the S20, the yellowish tone is still there, but the micro jitter seems to be almost gone. So if you're just standing still, I think this will give you the best results. Now onto 8K 30, this is where it does not look too good, so avoid 8K at all costs during nighttime, but I think this is the only time where the Honor 20 Pro can beat the Samsung in video. So in the end, I think the Honor 20 Pro is still pretty good, and it does have some pros against the Samsung S20, which is mainly the macro lens and the better performance in really low light situations. But in the end, for me, I do like the Samsung phone for the ultra wide angle lens, which is really good and looks super wide, so I prefer that look, and it does have way better video. So that is my camera comparison between these two phones. If you are interested, I do have links down below. Please follow me on Instagram, give a like, subscribe, hit the bell, and thanks for watching.